Good evening. I have no idea if things are coming through, but I can only hope that they are. Let's figure this out. Where are we? Promotion. There we go. Well, the microphone's coming through because I can hear myself. Lovely. Alright. And that probably caused a bit of feedback. Must be careful not to do that in future. Well, thank you for coming along. Say it's good to see everyone, but I'm an inky black void. I am fumbling my way around. I am figuring it out as I go, so do bear with me. But thought that it might be nice just to sit by the fire, as it were, and tell some stories. Just one moment, please. Much better. Needed to improve the atmosphere a little bit. So, I'm going to be reading some Edgar Allan Poe tonight. I think that might be a lovely little foray into hanging out together, reading some stories, getting some practice in. There's also some Edgar Allan Poe poems. Edgar Allan poems? Yes, let's call them that. And I figured some of those might be fun to throw in there too. And I am flailing, as you can all tell. Do people have any preferences to whether we start with a story or a poem? Some of the ones I've got ready are like The Raven, Telltale Heart, Cask of Amontillado. You know what? Telltale Heart. I like that one. It's a good one. So I hope this doesn't come through in the background, but it's too hot not to have a fan on. No, I think that sounds good. Magnificent. Well, without further ado, let me tell you the story of... Fantastic. Thank you both. The Telltale Heart is one of the more classic Poe stories, along with The Raven, of course. I could try and describe it, or I could just read it to you. So I think I'll just read it to you. The Telltale Heart. And I'm not actually sure when this was written. A while ago. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Is it too bass boosted? Do I need to dial it back a bit? I can't hear myself. Just need to double check. The last thing I want to do is blow out anyone's eardrums or good headphones. Okay. Thank you, Koi. This is a warning though. If you have very good headphones and you don't want them to rattle, perhaps use some less good headphones or more good headphones. If I step back from the mic any further, I'll be across the room. Let's try that. I'm not that far in. I'll take it from the beginning again. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. But once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. Think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb that old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously. Cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he was not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were close-fastened, through fear of robbers. And so I know that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he'd been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in his bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he'd been trying to comfort himself with these superstitions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped his victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he never saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at last a single dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbour. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But, for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught it all. When I had made an end of these labours, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbour during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them, at length, to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But, ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chattered. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until, at last, I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about trifles, in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, and louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God! No, no, they heard. They suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again! Hark! Louder, 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 louder. Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. Yeah, that's where it ends. Poe knew how to finish things with a crescendo, I'll give him that. Not a neat and tidy ending, sure, but a crescendo. Yeah, it's basically man goes insane after murdering his old landlord. And I mean, like, I'm pretty sure he was off this coil before he started, but you know, here we go. Just give me a minute. I need a drink of water. I don't have channel redeems yet, but hydrate. Hydrate is just going to be something I have to yell out. All right. Do let me know if there's any background noise coming through too. I'm concerned about that fan. I know they tend to get quite whiny. Excellent. Glad to hear that. All right. I'm not against cliche. So I'm very ready to just go ahead and read The Raven because it is a very good story. If anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. Excellent. Thank you, Obvi. Excuse me. Everyone's favourite and probably most well-known Poe M. Also, yes, hi Obvi. Thank you for joining. It's lovely to have you here. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books a cease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden who the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance at war. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven now," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further then he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, with no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned in my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the egg-rode hencer, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe, from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it shall clasp a sainted maiden who the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden who the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's new Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the ballad pust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Honestly, that is a real classic. So before moving on, how is everyone doing tonight? Thank you everyone for coming in and joining me so far as well. It's been really lovely. You're not uncultured, Koi. Don't you all go putting yourself down like this. There's nothing uncultured about not being too familiar. Gotta learn somehow, anyhow. Yeah, no, that's fair. I suppose the only reason that I would be particularly familiar with any of that, and look, it's debatable whether I'm familiar with it, is that Australia's still arguably part of the Commonwealth. I mean, I never studied Shakespeare, so to fail, it means you still learnt more than I have, so. Exactly. Thank you, Lo. Yeah, honestly, I agree. Commonwealth, Schmommonwealth. And look, you can be an English teacher and not know Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure those two are separate facts. That is very Canadian coy. USA? USA. Wait, no, that's just gone South African. I don't do accents, and there is a very, very good reason for it. I have two accents. Oh, I know what you're saying. But you're saying it in a Canadian accent, you see. Yep, afraid so. You're saying it with a hint of maple syrup accent. Yeah, probably. Honestly, I have no real sense of geography or skill.
Obvious spiral just followed.
Aww, thank you. Look, all I know about Shakespeare is that everyone says he was extremely horny and there's so many dick jokes it's not funny. That is true, Koi. Eventually, I might do some nature of initiation. That would be fun, actually. What would people think that should look like? I don't know. I still need it. Yeah, no, this would be a cult. This would absolutely be a cult. I would not even hide that. Oh yeah, no. Koi's is not a cult. Koi is our little family. Mine is a cult. Mine would 100% be a cult. Also, for those who are in here, and I'm not sure who that is, but for everyone in here, if you're not familiar with Koi's channel, go and check her out. Very, very fun, very good, very, very good bean. You know, actually, yeah. Welcome, Obvious. Thank you for joining us. I'm very happy to have you here. You're right. You may have followed before the stream, Lauren, but Oh, I like that idea, Obvi. But yes, no, I think, Lauren, would you like to be welcomed in as well? Because consent is important. Very well, then. Just one moment, please. Welcome, Lauren. Thank you for joining us. It wouldn't be the same without you here. We're very, very happy to have you joining us tonight. Welcome to the cult. Okay, Koi. Also, as a tangent, I think I need a chat command for yes occult, but we'll work on that one later. Welcome, Koi. Honestly, this channel wouldn't exist without you. You are very, very welcome here, and we're so, so grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Family cults. Koi, I'm not having this fight with you. Ever. It couldn't have happened without you, so thank you. Just accept it, okay? Or do I have to say it like this? That's what I thought. Yeah, family cult. Nah. Koi can handle the family side. I'll handle the cult side. Yes, I will absolutely do that, Koi. In fact, let me do that right now because I am going to take a 5-minute break in a moment to eat dinner so that I can come back fully energized and recharged to make sure that you all get exactly what you're here for. It's exactly like a side gig. You've got it. We don't like the word cover up. We've got nothing to hide, just things we don't want to show. Yes, it's familial confections. Everyone's got to have their sweets. I think I prefer confections. Cold candy. Delicious. Yeah, that's actually pretty much it. It's like a local fair. You've heard of Sideshow Alley. This is Sideshow Cult. Ooh, I like that. Thank you, Koi. I am small, but not for copyright reasons. Thank you. We come with a free gift bag on your way out. Please note that entry into the area that gives you the free gift bag does cost $40 Australian. So, gonna move the microphone away momentarily. You'll still hear me, but hopefully with less food eating ASMR. But what are people's favorite sort of horror stories or podcasts? Just general horror or spoopy? What kind of things do people tend to enjoy the most there? Ooh, the chair. I'll make sure to sit down for that one. Honestly, I do have a soft spot for Japanese horror. I've got a massive soft spot for Junji Ito, but one can't really read manga out. Eldritch horror is good, but it has to be done well or it's just camp. Thank you, Koi. I'll have a look at it. Oh, the human chair. I will refrain on making comments of the connections that my brain has drawn. Because let's be honest, if I said everything that my brain came up with, there is no rating high enough to put on this. So I could try and read manga out loud, except I can barely find the words to describe a thought that is my own. Trying to describe something in front of me, I will spend half an hour on one frame and still not do it justice. Yes, yes, creepypastas. Very much, very, very much want to be reading some of those. I haven't read them in a long, long time, but I am very, very much looking forward to reading it together. Creepypastas are fun, what can I say? I love unsettling without scary. Honestly, yeah, I feel that. I feel that a lot. I I don't think I have to self-censor so much as I would spend more time telling people how I connected dots than just telling them the thoughts. Because that's what ADHD is like. Yes. It took me a minute to figure out what you meant by spooky with carbs, because I'm just like, carbs make everything better. But also, yes, creepypastas are just spooky with carbs. Spookarbs. Yes. It's not a creepypasta. It's spaghetti. I very much need to set up sound effects. You will all hate me for it, but it'll be amazing. Keep it PG. Keep it PG, Patch. Keep it PG. Bear with me one moment. Sorry about that. If he barks again, he gets kicked out. Well, I reckon it might be time for another story. What do people think? Has anyone heard the story of the cask of Amontillado? I'm sure you probably have, even if you don't recognize it by its title. Yes, my grammar is pre-lesional. It's the sound of there being a massive lesion on my brain where the wrinkles should be. Well then. Yeah, I think I should tell a story, Lauren. You shouldn't feel obligated to be the one keeping conversation going on my stream. That doesn't seem fair on you. Story time then. So, this is the cask of Amontillado. And it's not Amontillado, but it's Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as best I could. But when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who so well know the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled. But the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed have I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines he was sincere. In this respect I did not differ from him materially. I was skilful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting, party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hands. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of the carnival." "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado?" "I have my doubts." "Amontillado?" "And I must satisfy them." "Amontillado?" "As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucrezi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me. Lucrezi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry, and yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go. Whither? To your vaults. My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucrezi, I have no engagement. Come. My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitro. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucrezi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silt, and drawing a reliquary closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to the palazzo. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in the honour of the time. I had told them that I should not return until the morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took their sconces too from Flambeau, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. The pipe, he said. It is farther on, said I, but observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls. He turned towards me, and looked into my eyes with two filthy, filmy orbs that distilled like rheum of intoxication. Nitra? He asked, at length. Nitra, I replied. How long have you had that cough? Stepping out, it just has an entire paragraph of the sound of coughing. I'm not going to suffer your poor eardrums with that. My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It is nothing, he said at last. Come, I said with decision. We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired and beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucrezi. Enough, he said. The cough's a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough. True, I replied. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily. But you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. Drink, I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. I drink, he said, to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life. He again took my arm, and we proceeded. These vaults, he said, are extensive. The Montresors, I replied, were a great and numerous family. I forget your arms. A huge human foot door in a field azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto? Nemo me impune lacessit. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes, and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through long walls of piled skeletons, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the innermost recesses of the catacombs. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. "The nitra," I said. "See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough." "It is nothing," he said. "Let us go on, but first, another draught of the medic." I broke and reached him a flagon of De Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. "You do not comprehend," he said. "Not I," I replied. "Then you are not of the Brotherhood." "How?" "You are not one of the Masons." Yes, I said. Yes. "You?" "Impossible. A Mason?" "A Mason," I replied. "A sign," he said. "A sign." "It is this," I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my roquelaire a trowel. "You jest," he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. "But let us proceed to the Amontillado." "Be it so," I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak, and again offering my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior crypt or recess, in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavoured to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination the feeble light did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Herein is the Amontillado. As for Lucrece—" "He is an ignoramus," interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links around his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was much too astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitra. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied. the Amontillado. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials, and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. Then there was a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labours and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the 5th, 6th, and 7th tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated, I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamoured. I re-echoed, I aided, I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamourer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last, and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about this at the Palazzo. Over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. "Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the Palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone." "For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes. Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labour. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half a century, no mortal had disturbed them. In pace requiescat. So yeah, dude went, "Don't like you," and then effectively locked him alive in a hole in the wall. Ta-da! Dude was like, let me show you my masonry skills, but from the other side. Look, that's fair. It was... I'm going to go and figure out when this was actually written. Hang on. Get back. Get back. Back, back, back. It was published... Why has it got to be such a greed? Published in 1846. So... I also can't read much Italian. Or, like, pronounce much Italian, so... I probably ballsed up a lot of that. You see, only one of them was a Freemason, though. The other one was very much not a free Mason. Though it was his final Masonic temple. Anyhow. Are you telling me to be quiet? I'm not entirely certain. Because if you are, you're all just going to have to deal. You came here, you knew what you were getting into. Okay, good. Oh lordy, that is a long one. Fall of the House of Usher. Very good. I mean, I sure hope we're allowed to talk to ourselves, because otherwise I'm sitting here looking like an absolute numpty. So, yeah. Guess that's what we're just doing now. To get wrecked. So, does anyone have any preferences of what the next story or poem would be? And it doesn't have to be Poe. If there is anything that people would like for me to read out, I am more than happy to take requests at the moment. Because I'm still eating, so unless you'll really want some full-on curry ASMR, which I'm pretty sure counts as a crime against humanity, then I will move the mic away for a moment. Hey,
Mr. Scoops
Sneakin'.
_1 just followed.
Scoops! Thank you! You're saying you don't want this, Lauren? Too much? Tough. Thank you for joining.
Sneathan just followed.
So, I'm eating, but I have been suggested. It is better. Thank you, Scoops. It was absolutely horrible until you got back here. Anyway, I have something of an initiation that our lovely Koi recommended. So, for those who would like to be initiated, because nothing happens without permission, this is a cult, we're not monsters. But I am happy to welcome people aboard. I'm afraid so. I'm afraid so, Scoops. You're in my domain now. Though I do imagine the first thing you do, come in, follow, and hit me with a banhammer. Yeah, it is Koi. I'm not sure why it's not working properly, but I can see that it does look weirdly naked, that is true. But yeah, no, Stream Elements is absolutely in the active mods list. It's just not currently active. It's all very weird. Yes, yes, this is a cult. Hmm. Don't worry. I wouldn't make you a mod just willy-nilly. I mean, I would, but only because I'm chaotic. What the heck is going on, y'all? Why are there suddenly feet in my chat? What? I'm so confused. Ah, you're a spread. Never a dull moment. That is true. I do love having you all around.
Panin is our friend just followed.
Pain. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Gosh, we've got all the regulars in now. I mean, not necessarily regulars to me, but all the good beans. It is the Azol. Alright. I believe we have a few people to initiate now, don't we? Alright, hands up for those who want to be welcomed aboard. Pain, that's a face, not a hand. In this cult, we respect enthusiastic, informed consent. Anything less than that is not consent. Consent. Alrighty, Scoops. Thank you. Alright, Pain, that's a hand. I will accept that. I will actively uninitiate people for feet. So be careful about towing the line. Yeah, it's something between 11 and 13 inches. Oh, that truly is the pits of depravity. when I get channel points, reinitiation is absolutely going to be in there. Until then, all you've got to do is ask nicely, I suppose. Yeah, no. Yeah, let's just not do the armpit emotes. Although I do actually endorse you doing armpit emotes, I want to see what you bring along here. But you didn't hear that from me. Wait, was that Please at armpit emotes, or was that it being initiated? I'm going to presume armpit emotes until otherwise confirmed. Hey, thank you, Koi. Koi, you're a goddamn genius. I don't like that idea one bit there, Pain. Not one bit. Not one bit. I unlike that idea. Ayo. Okay, cool. I'm glad to know that you can't hear her typing, because she's exactly 3 feet away. I was worried that the keyboard might have come through the microphone. Well, so. Hey, Z! Thank you for joining in. Can you hear me, though? Oh, okay, no, that was it up. Okay, cool. Ew.
ZZZXXX0110 just followed.
Ah, good old Brian. Honestly, not even. Okay. You get... I'm giving you fictional channel points to claim that. But you need to actually give me something to claim for that one. This is no help up hot take. I'm not nearly creative enough to come up with lines. But Pain, where are you going? Your device is connected. Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't understand. As for hydrating, you have one unread message. You have No. Unread messages. Is that something I want clipped of me, though? Is that really something I want to be on the record as saying? Y'all, I'm not Brian. I can't pull off half the things he can pull off. Yet. Yet. Give me time. So I really hope that my noise gate's not cutting out those low tones.
Moose Gaming streams just followed.
Moose! Oh my god, thank you all! Y'all are way too good to me. Very, very good. I mean, Lauren. Hello, should I go? Yeah, just testing out whether my microphone's too boosy. Boosy? Bassy. Bass boosty. Boosy. It's boosy now. Next stream is just going to be called Patch Gets Boosy. Oh lord. I will preface this now with I am not going to play Train Simulator. But if I did, I would 100% call the stream Boosy Kaboosie. Only because that's brilliant. Alright. Are we talking AI Siri or AI Grumble? Because I'm doing it once. Wait, I'm pretty sure Siri is the only AI one. 9999. Moose is playing the game using mouse and keyboard. Ew. Alright. Well, we've had a bunch of people who've been so incredible to have followed in the last few minutes. I don't have an initiation like Koi because I'm not nearly that cool. But I could small voice welcome people in. So with that in context, who would like to be involved in this group initiation? Don't worry, group initiation does mean that people will still get called out by name. You don't get out of it that easily. I'm afraid, Moose, this is actually a cult. We're a cool cult. We respect consent. But the not cult status was taken by Koi, so we had to take what was left. Well then. We're all very, very proud of you, Moose. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome in Sneethan, Scoops, Payne, Moose, of course, Z, Art. Thank you everyone for coming aboard. And welcome. We're so glad you're here. I hope that you can stay for a long, long time. It's not nearly as theatrical, but it's fun. I'm not complaining, I just don't have nearly the same artistic skill to actually make things look pretty. But thank you, Moose. Precisely. You are the artist here, Koi. See, that is an amazing, amazing introduction. Unfortunately, that is wildly illegal here, and that breaks my heart. So I've just got to do the next best thing and just growl at people and hope they don't run away. Exactly, Moose. Let's make this about you for a minute. Yours is still great. Y'all are adorable. I hope you're aware of this. Also, bed edit cucumber. It took me a little bit to figure out what bed edit cucumber was, but once it clicked, I sighed internally, so thank you, Payne. I suspect I'm well out of the loop here, and that's okay. I have no idea what RBF is in this case, so... Today I am the scrubbed. Circuit. That's fair. Oh, no, that makes sense. Yeah, that's all good. Valid. Yes, please do post a link, Koi. I am more than happy to shout out everyone in this channel, and if you've got a Twitch stream and stuff going on, please feel free to share. We are a community cult here. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Alright, hang on. What am I looking at? You know what? This deserves a proper reaction stream. So bear with me whilst I fuck around with OBS. You're gonna watch with me. So, get wrecked, lol. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Where are we? I didn't think this far ahead, so you're just gonna have to watch while I figure this out on the fly. Scrubs. Ba, 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 ba. You are hearing my thought process in action, and if you think it sucks, imagine living with this 24/7. I'm not happy about the fact that when I sing-song words, it tends to come out to the tune of Teletubbies. Make of that one what you will. You can keep complaining all you want there, Lo. Alright. That should be coming through. So in that case... Ba-ba-bum. Let's make sure that one's working. Bum 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 bum. I'm sure you do thinky with the winky, but we're not here to talk about that right now, Payne. Now I can assure you I haven't ever actually watched this clip. I have no idea what's going on, so you all can suffer with me. Enjoy.
Of all the questions we had, the one that came up most often was ask Benedict to say the word penguin.
Penguin.
What is this about?
Well, apparently I got it wrong repeatedly in the documentary, and now I'm completely terrified of the word.
How do you get the word penguin?
Don't go near it.
The first one you sort of get away with, and then after that you lose all sense of what the word is. Let's have a look. Listen carefully.
And the last thing you might expect to see here is penguins.
Penguins.
Are Fiordland crested penguins, named after this penguin of South New Zealand. So why are these woodlands so attractive to penguins?
Penguin.
A freshwater stream through the forest makes a handy highway for a parent penguin heading home from a fishing trip.
Penguin. Yes. Everyone knows that they are the fairy-crested penguin. Yes, honestly, Koi, you are doing incredible. And I'm glad that you think of all the things to do that Tingles is in there as well as worth mentioning. So thank you. Penguin. Charge. I'm charging my laser. Nah, honestly, Koi, you're doing the best job here. Thank you, though. And thank you everyone for coming out so far. Like, I'm not even half done, and you've been amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Moose. I feel bad because I don't tend to get to join your streams because time differences, but thank you. So, for those who are only joining relatively recently and have just listened to me, well, talking shit, as it were, we have actually been reading through some of the Edgar Allan Poe stories and poems so that I can give people the spooky tingles. Because that's fun. Yes, poems. Edgar Allan poems. Alla? Fuck. Words. Hard. So, before I carry on, I just want to do one more official, proper, direct shout out. Koi is wonderful, and I highly recommend that if you haven't already, go and check out Koi's channel. Honestly, fantastic. I mean, so is Moose and Payne and everyone else here. Like, you're all wonderful, but Koi, you've been doing a fantastic job at not making this stream look potato, and like getting stream elements up for me while I just waffle. So thank you. Honestly, for a first stream, it wouldn't be nearly the same without all of you. Koi, you have everyone. Everyone. You're all good. Make sure you all know that. I am potato. It is true. I am an absolute roasted spud. At least during winter I'm a jacket potato, but that's different. Oh, okay. One last thing and then I'll read. Hey, Payne. Payne. Kamisamba. You're welcome. I'm sure you're only out to go and get some better, richer headphones, aren't you, Payne? Something that lets you feel all of the rumble, the depths. I know, right? Why would you want a yucky headset? Oh lord, I just imagine we're playing Viscera cleanup detail now. That would be a whole mess. 12 out of 10 would do. Sultry Viscera cleanup detail coming to a stream near you. Yeah, that would actually be pretty fun. I'd be down for that. But I'm not sure I have the brain power for it right now, which means it's probably story time. Ah yes, cheer the fear. So I have a is it a prose? 2-paragraph poem of Edgar Allan Poe's. I have a story that suggests it's going to take about half an hour to read, and I think that's pretty on point. Or I am open if anyone has any burning suggestions of what you would like me to read out. If you want to melt in this heat with a blanket, go right ahead. Each to their own. I recognise not everyone is in this disgusting Australian heat, but Russian sleep experiment. I will put that on the list of things to check out for sure. Well, in that case, go for it, Koi. Oh, it's too late. I will... Anything that's got sleep experiment, I am 100% down to participate in. A dream within a dream. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? It's only short, but I think it's sweet. It's interesting. It's not appropriate to apply labels to people who have long since gone, but you look back and you're like, damn, this boy had depression. Mind you, middle 1800s England, I think depression was the healthy response. Alright. Well, the last of the stories and poems and whatnot that I prepared is The Fall of the House of Usher. It's a long one. And I recall it being a very good story. But it might go for about, well, half an hour or more. Is everyone ready? Do you all need a blanket? Go on then. If you need snacks, now's the time. You are prepared, Pain. Most people only get a smoke after I'm done with them. Though if I keep that up, it might need to be an 18+ channel, I suppose. I'll keep my coffee to my coffee opinions to myself for now. That's the next stream. Patch has coffee opinions. That's it. Okay then. I like the sound of that. I will 100% read out some of those stories. So would people like a number of short stories or a couple of longer ones? I'm happy to go with the flow. Dare I ask what power sugar is? Is it because you're just such a sweet guy? Yeah, that is a good point. Honestly, yeah, I think I can relate. Alrighty. Talking smack is always a highlight, that is true. Oh, palm sugar. Yes, that makes sense. Alright, so... I can't tell if this is the story or just a synopsis of it. I'm presuming it's the story, but I'm also presuming that is Iamon, not Lemon. Though I do love the idea of Lemon, the disarmed samurai. Why is he called Lemon? He's a little bit bitter about being disarmed. 1 million years dungeon! Alright. So, Yotsuya Kaiden. A tale that has been many times transformed, told, adapted, and like most legends, there are many versions. Yet something remains unchanged in each of them. These are all stories of revenge, murder, ghosts, love, and betrayal. Here we will introduce you to one of the most common versions. Iamon, a disarmed samurai, hopes to raise his rank by marrying Oiwa, daughter of Yutsu... I've got to put my head in Japanese mode again. Bear with me. Daughter of Yotsuya Samon. After begging the latter to allow him to marry his daughter, and having suffered a violent refusal, the mad samurai kills Samon. A low-life criminal, Nasuke, witnesses the murder and offers to help Iamon hide the crime in exchange for his help. Indeed, the latter has his sights on Oiwa's sister, Osode, already promised to another. They conspire together to accuse other bandits of the murder of the father, and Nasuke pushes Osode's fiancée from the top of a waterfall to get rid of him. Jesus Christ, that's a bit much, but okay. The two men who managed to pass themselves off as heroes, having nothing to do with the murders, each of them managed to marry the daughters. Much later, married Iamon and Oiwa live together with their newborn child. They live in poverty. Iamon is not happy, and Oiwa suffers that his father has not yet been avenged. The samurai begins to fall in love with a younger woman, Oume, the daughter of a rich doctor, At the same time, Naosuke, who lives with Osode, is also tired of living in poverty. The story here differs in two different versions. In the one we see in the Kabuki play, Ome is madly in love with Iemon, and her family poisons Oiwa in order to make marriage possible. In another version, it is Naosuke who sees in the marriage of Iemon and Ome the perfect opportunity to become rich, and gives poison to the samurai so that he poisons his wife. The fact is that this poison in each version disfigures terribly the latter, who ends up dying and taking her son's life with hers. Her body is dumped in the river by the samurai and Naosuke. Soon after that, Iemon marries Ome, but on their wedding day, the avenging ghost of Oiwa comes back to haunt the samurai and urges him, victim of hallucinations, to murder both his new wife and the father of the bride. The ghost is also harassing Naosuke and his wife. The latter is surprised by the visit of her former fiancé, who, having survived the fall, accusing her of adultery. Wild. Distraught, she manages to push her two husbands to give her death, leaving a letter in which she confesses to Naosuke that she is in fact his younger sister, causing the latter's suicide, who confesses his crimes to the former fiancé. Iemon, who fled to the mountain, tries to fish, but it is not fishes, but the bodies of all those he killed that appear before him in the pond. Stop dumping them all in the same pond then, bruh. Constantly harassed by the ghost of Oiwa, he sinks into madness until he meets the former fiancé of Osode, who will finally obtain his revenge by killing Iemon. I think to make sense of this story, I am going to need a pinboard, 2 bajillion red push pins, and about 1.5 miles of red yarn. But let's try. There's only like 4 paragraphs here. I'm sure we can piece it together. We've got Iemon, who wants to marry Oiwa, who is the daughter of Salmon. A little bit fishy, if you ask me. Begs Salmon to marry Oiwa, says no. Samurai kills Salmon. So, man want to marry woman. Woman's father said no. Man mad, man angry. Man kill woman dad. Crook witnesses. Says, I'll help you hide the body if you help me. I want in on the sister's sister. Or I want in the white lady's sister. And so they push lady's sister's fiance off a waterfall, because when you've got a samurai, clearly a waterfall is the best way to get rid of someone. If you're going to go out, make a splash. And then they pass themselves off as heroes because they had nothing to do with the murder. That just makes you a normal person. But you do you, bro. And each of them managed to get with the people they wanted to get with after killing the father and the fiancé to be. This is 1 paragraph. It only gets more. Both couples are living sadly and in poverty. Yeah, pretty much. It really needs to be a Control-Z on life. They're both living in poverty. The samurai is doing full meme, looking over his shoulder going, ooh, young one, daughter of a rich doctor. This is where they deviate, but ultimately in one story they kill the samurai's current wife so that Ome can marry him, kill off the wife so the mistress can move in. In the other, the second husband wants the first one to happen, so they kill off the wife that way. In either story, basically, the samurai's wife and newborn child both die, and they're dumped in the river because they've clearly got a thing for bodies in water. You'd think they'd have learned. Samurai marries second woman, except the rather justifiably cranky ghost of the first woman comes back and says, how about you do to me what you did to, or you do to her what you did to me, and murder both the new wife and the father of the bride because it's only fair. And also the crook who's like, I'll help you hide the body, is like visited by the former fiance who somehow survived falling from a waterfall but still took this long to come back. And I'm imagining still dripping in water. Probably. Though I'm pretty sure that's best described as a cuddle puddle. Okiku. I'll kick you into another waterfall. Yeah, let's go and try and find the story of Okiku, because this one, it's good. But I still feel like I need my red twine. Let's see. Come on, Lynx. Please work. The ghost story of Okiku. Not sure why it's... Oh, it's an art piece, I see. The plate counting ghost. Everything references the story but doesn't actually want to give the story. Oh, hang on, this looks promising. Thank you. I was trying to search that website again, but it was being angsty. Alright. A long time ago, there lived a beautiful and young maid named Okiku, whose master, a samurai named Oyama, was known as cruel and brutal. The latter, coveting Okiku, made advances to him every day, wanting to make of her his mistress, but the young woman applied herself to refuse them cordially. Losing patience, the samurai set a trap for Okiku. In fact, the household had 10 extremely valuable plates, considered to be one of the family treasures, and their care was borne by the maid. Aoyama decided to hide one of the plates and then point out to Okiku that one was missing. In a panic, she started to count and count again the plates, breaking one being punishable by death, to arrive perpetually at the number of 9. Aoyama offers to cover Okiku on condition that she becomes his mistress, but the poor lady refuses once again. The samurai, mad with rage, beats her and makes her hang over a well, torturing her and plunging her inside, and asks her one last time if she would finally become his mistress. Refusing again, he kills her and throws her body in the well. What is it with bodies in water, really? Since that day, Okiku's voice has been heard from the well, counting from 1 to 9, and then uttering a terrible shriek. Some legends say that a monk would have succeeded in conjuring the ghost by shouting 10 at the end of her counting, and the spirit, thus appeased, would have passed into the world of the dead. Others say that we still hear her every night, desperate Okiku counting and crying, in the well of the Himeji Castle, one of the most famous castles of Japan, which has thus become a tourist attraction. In the 18th century, the legend was so widespread that by the time a larval invasion spread in the old wells of Japan, people started talking about the infection as Okiku's revenge, and ended up calling the caterpillar the Okikumushi. Even today, the story remains very famous in Japan, and there are several adaptations to cinema. The latter would have inspired the character of Sadako, or Samara in the American version of the film The Ring. It's pretty cool. It reminds me a lot of the old kind of like Brothers Grimm sort of fairy tales and stories, where it kind of has a moral, but it's usually someone was a dickhead and wasn't the person to suffer the consequences for it. I do like old sort of mythology and tales. Really love Norse mythology. There's some really interesting stories about Loki, who's totally not envy. All good. How is it that I look away from chat for 2 minutes and suddenly I'm coming back to how long does it take for a pile of bodies to smell? Like, seriously guys, what? I haven't been to Norway. In fact, I've never actually left Australia. I'd like to, but that requires money. So one day. Or I need a sugar parent. You know. Basically, if I could just get paid for not having to work 32 hours a week, I'd be happy with that. Yes, Glucose Guardian. Oh, that's cool. I keep forgetting that you went to medical school, Moose. I'm just sitting here, a pleb who has done a number of different higher education things and only completed like 2 of them. But again, we're not comparing here. It's very cool that you've done that. See, I would put Brothers Grimm stories on the list, but at the same time, there are some really creepy ones out there. All right. So, oh, of course. As soon as I saw the name of it, Ningen, I was like, Yeah. As a side note, this is The Human Chair, a story that comes highly recommended from our darling Koi. And Koi will take, in fact, all responsibility for the disturbances of this story. But before I go into it, I do recommend a fantastic Japanese metal band of the same name. Ningen, not human. Like, it translates to human chair, but the band name is Ningen. So, I haven't read this. Koi warns us of some disturbing content. You can learn it with me. Let's get to the end of the story and see if you still have the same opinions there. I am keen to hear what people think. So, Edogawa Runpo, 1894 to 1965, began writing detective and mystery stories in 1923. I'm sure it'll be fine. And look, if we get scarred together. Because that's what a cult does. Thank you. So, I just got distracted by my own brain. Welcome to being a part of my brain. Edgar Allan Poe began writing detective and mystery stories in 1923, the year of the Great Kanto earthquake. Oh, it wasn't a wrinkle, it slipped right off. And he's usually credited with being the first such professional writer in Japan. Ranpo's real name was Hirai Taro. He chose a pen name like that of one of the most admired and popular of all American writers in Japan, Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, I see it. I can respect that. Ranpo gained a worldwide reputation for his tales, which often are filled with the erotic and the grotesque. That's true. It really does. The Human Chair, Ningen, is one of his early works, having been written in 1925. Yoshiko saw her husband off to his work at the Foreign Office at a little past 10 o'clock. Then, now that her time was once again her very own, she shut herself up in the study she shared with her husband to resume work on the story she was to submit for the special summer issue of K magazine. She was a very versatile writer with high literary talent and a smooth flowing style. Even her husband's popularity as a diplomat was overshadowed by hers as an authoress. Daily, she was overwhelmed with letters from readers praising her works. In fact, this very morning, as soon as she sat down before her desk, she immediately proceeded to glance through the numerous letters which the morning mail had brought. Without exception, in content they all followed the same pattern, but prompted by her deep feminine sense of consideration, she always read through each piece of correspondence addressed to her, whether monotonous or interesting. Taking the short and simple letters first, she quickly noted their contents. Finally, she came to one which was a bulky, manuscript-like sheaf of pages. Although she had not received any advance notice that a manuscript was to be sent to her, still it was not uncommon for her to receive the efforts of amateur writers seeking her valuable criticism. In most cases, these were long-winded, pointless, and yawn-provoking attempts at writing. Nevertheless, she now opened the envelope in her hand and took out the numerous, closely written sheets. As she had anticipated, it was a manuscript, carefully bound. But somehow, for some unknown reason, there was neither a title nor a byline. The manuscript began abruptly. Dear Madam. Momentarily, she reflected. Maybe after all, it was just a letter. I will read this in the creepy voice. I will read the letter in the creepy voice. Don't you worry. Maybe after all, it was just a letter. Unconsciously, her eyes hurried on to read 2 or 3 lines, and then gradually she became absorbed in a strangely gruesome narrative. Her curiosity aroused to the bursting point and spurred on by some unknown magnetic force. She continued to read. Dear Madam, I do hope you will forgive this presumptuous letter from a complete stranger. What I am about to write, Madam, may shock you to no end. However, I am determined to lay bare before you a confession, my own, and to describe in detail the terrible crime I have committed. For many months, I have hidden myself away from the light of civilization, hidden, as it were, like the devil himself. In this whole wide world, no one knows of my deeds. However, quite recently, a queer change took place in my conscious mind, and I just couldn't keep it bared to keep my secret any longer. I simply had to confess. All that I have written so far must certainly have awakened only perplexity in your mind. However, I beseech you to bear with me and kindly read my communication to the bitter end, because if you do, you will fully understand the strange workings of my mind and the reason why it is to you in particular that I make this confession. I am really at a loss as to where to begin, for the facts which I am setting forth are all so grotesquely out of the ordinary. Frankly, words fail me, for human words seem utterly inadequate to sketch all the details. But nevertheless, I will try to lay bare the events in chronological order, just as they happened. First, let me explain that I am ugly beyond description. Please bear this fact in mind. Otherwise, I fear that if and when you do grant my ultimate request and do see me, you may be shocked and horrified at the sight of my face. After so many months of unsanitary living. However, I implore you to believe me when I state that despite the extreme ugliness of my face, within my heart there has always burned a pure and overwhelming passion. Next, let me explain that I am a humble workman by trade. Had I been born into a well-to-do family, I might have found the power, with money, to ease the torture of my soul brought on by my ugliness. Or perhaps, if I had been endowed by nature with artistic talents, I might again have been able to forget my bestial countenance and seek consolation in music or poetry. But unblessed with any such talents, and being the unfortunate creature that I am, I had no trade to turn to except that of a humble cabinet maker. Eventually, my specialty became that of making assorted types of chairs. In this particular line, I was fairly successful, to such a degree, in fact, that I gained the reputation of being able to satisfy any kind of order, no matter how complicated. For this reason, in woodworking circles, I came to enjoy the special privilege of accepting only orders for luxury chairs with complicated requests for unique carvings, new designs for the backrest and arm supports, fancy paddings for the cushions and seat, all work of a nature which called for skilled hands and patient trial and study, work which an amateur craftsman could hardly undertake. The reward for all my pains, however, lay in the sheer delight of creating. You may even consider me a braggart when you hear this, but it all seemed to me to be the same type of thrill which a true artist feels upon creating a masterpiece. As soon as a chair was completed, it was my usual custom to sit on it to see how it felt, and despite the dismal life of one of my humble profession, at such moments I experienced an indescribable thrill. Giving my mind free rein, I used to imagine the types of people who would eventually curl up in this chair, certainly people of nobility, living in palatial residences, with exquisite, priceless paintings hanging on the walls, glittering crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceilings, expensive rugs on the floor, etc. And one particular chair, which I imagined standing before a mahogany table, gave me the vision of fragrant western flowers scenting the air with sweet perfume. Enwrapped in these strange visions, I came to feel that I, too, belonged to such settings, and I derived no end of pleasure from imagining myself to be an influential figure in society. Foolish thoughts such as these kept coming to me in rapid succession. Imagine, madam, the pathetic figure I made, sitting comfortably in a luxurious chair of my own making, and pretending that I was holding hands with the girl of my dreams. As was always the case, however, the noisy chattering of the uncouth women of the neighbourhood and the hysterical shrieking, babbling and wailing of the children quickly dispelled all my beautiful dreams. Again, grim reality reared its ugly head before my eyes. Once back to earth, I again found myself a miserable creature, a helpless, crawling worm. And as for my beloved, that angelic woman, she, too, vanished like a mist. I cursed myself for my folly. Why, even the dirty women tending Barbies in the streets did not so much as bother to glance in my direction. Every time I completed a new chair, I was haunted by feelings of utter despair. And with the passing of the months, my long accumulated misery was enough to choke me. One day, I was charged with the task of making a huge, leather-covered armchair of a type I had never before conceived for a foreign hotel located in Yokohama. Actually, This particular type of chair was to have been imported from abroad, but through the persuasion of my employer, who admired my skill as a chairmaker, I received the order. In order to live up to my reputation as a super craftsman, I began to devote myself seriously to my new assignment. Steadily, I became so engrossed in my labours that at times I even skipped food and sleep. Really, it would be no exaggeration to state that the job became my very life. Every fibre of the wood I used seemingly linked to my heart and soul. At last, when the chair was completed, I experienced a satisfaction hitherto unknown, for I honestly believed I had achieved a piece of work which immeasurably surpassed all my other creations. As before, I rested the weight of my body on the 4 legs that supported the chair, first dragging it into a sunny spot on the porch of my workshop. What comfort, what supreme luxury! Not too hard or too soft, the springs seemed to match the cushion with uncanny precision. And as for the leather, what an alluring touch it possessed. This chair not only supported the person who sat in it, but also seemed to embrace and to hug him. Still further, I also noted the perfect reclining angle of the back support, the delicate, puffy swellings of the armrests, the perfect symmetry of each of the component parts. Surely, no product could have expressed with greater eloquence the definition of the word comfort. I let my body sink deeply into the chair, and caressing the 2 armrests with my hands, gasped with genuine satisfaction and pleasure. Again, my imagination began to play its usual tricks, raising strange fancies in my mind. The scene, which I imagined now, rose before my eyes so vividly that, for a moment, I asked myself if I were not slowly going insane. While in this mental condition, a weird idea suddenly leapt to my mind. Assuredly, it was the whispering of the devil himself. Although it was a sinister idea, it attracted me with a powerful magnetism which I found impossible to resist. At first, no doubt, the idea found its seed in my secret yearning to keep the chair for myself. Realizing, however, that this was totally out of the question, I next longed to accompany the chair wherever it went. Slowly but steadily, as I continued to nurse this fantastic notion, my mind fell into the grip of an almost terrifying temptation. Imagine, madam, I really and actually made up my mind to carry out that awful scheme to the end, come what may. Quickly, I took the armchair apart and then put it together again to suit my weird purposes. As it was a large armchair, with the seat covered right down to the level of the floor, and furthermore, as the backrest and arm supports were all large in dimensions, I soon contrived to make the cavity inside large enough to accommodate a man without any danger of exposure. Of course, my work was hampered by the large amount of wooden framework and the springs inside, but with my usual skill as a craftsman, I remodeled the chair so that the knees could be placed below the seat, the torso and the head inside the backrest. Seated thus in the cavity, one could remain perfectly concealed. As this type of craftsmanship came as second nature to me, I also added a few finishing touches, such as improved acoustics to catch outside noises and, of course, a peephole cut out in the leather, but absolutely unnoticeable. Furthermore, I also provided storage space for supplies, wherein I placed a few boxes of hardtack and a water bottle. For another of nature's needs, I also inserted a large rubber bag. And by the time I finished fitting the interior of the chair with these and other unique facilities, it had become quite a habitable place, but not for longer than 2 or 3 days at a stretch. Completing my weird task, I stripped down to my waist and buried myself inside the chair. Just imagine the strange feeling I experienced, madam. Really, I felt that I had buried myself in a lonely grave. Upon careful reflection, I realized that it was, indeed, a grave. As soon as I entered the chair, I was swallowed up by complete darkness, and to everyone else in the world, I no longer existed. Presently, a message arrived from the dealer to take delivery of the armchair, bringing with him a large handcart. My apprentice, the only person with whom I lived, was utterly unaware of what had happened. I saw him talking to the messenger. While my chair was being loaded onto the handcart, one of the cart pullers exclaimed, "Good God! This chair certainly is heavy. It must weigh a ton." When I heard this, my heart leapt to my mouth. However, as the chair itself was obviously an extraordinarily heavy one, no suspicions were aroused, and before long I could feel the vibration of the rattling handcart being pulled along the streets. Of course, I worried incessantly, but at length, that same afternoon, the armchair in which I was concealed was placed with a thud on the floor of a room in the hotel. Later, I discovered it was not an ordinary room, but the lobby. Now, as you may have already guessed long ago, my key motive in this mad venture was to leave my hole in the chair when the coast was clear, loiter around the hotel, and start stealing. Who would dream that a man was concealed inside a chair? Like a fleeting shadow, I could ransack every room at will, and by the time any alarm was sounded, I would be safe and sound inside my sanctuary, holding my breath and observing the ridiculous antics of the people outside looking for me. Possibly you have heard of the hermit crab that is often found on coastal rocks. Shaped like a large spider, this crab crawls around stealthily and, as soon as it hears footsteps, quickly retreats into an empty shell, from which hiding place with gruesome, hairy front legs partly exposed, it looks furtively about. I was just like this freak monster crab, but instead of a shell, I had a better shield, a chair which could conceal me far more effectively. As you can imagine, my plan was so unusual and original, so utterly unexpected, that no one was ever the wiser. Consequently, my adventure was a complete success. On the 3rd day after my arrival at the hotel, I discovered I had already taken in quite a haul. Imagine the thrill and excitement of being able to rob to my heart's content, not to mention the fun I derived from observing the people rushing hither and thither, only a few inches away under my very nose, shouting, "The thief went this way! The thief went that way!" Unfortunately, I do not have the time to describe all my experiences in detail. Rather, allow me to proceed with my narrative and tell you of a far greater source of weird joy which I managed to discover. In fact, what I am about to relate now is the key point of this letter. First, however, I must request you to turn your thoughts back to the moment when my chair and I were both placed in the lobby of the hotel. As soon as the chair was put on the floor, all of the various members of staff took turns testing out the seat. After the novelty wore off, they all left the room, and then silence reigned, absolute and complete. However, I could not find the courage to leave my sanctum, for I began to imagine 1,000 dangers. For what seemed like ages, I kept my ears alerted for the slightest sound. After a while, I heard heavy footsteps drawing near, evidently from the direction of the corridor. The next moment, the unknown feet must have started to tread on a heavy carpet, for the walking sound died out completely. Some time later, the sound of a man panting, all out of breath, assailed my ears. Before I could anticipate what the next development would be, a large, heavy body, like that of a European, fell on my knees and seemed to bounce 2 or 3 times before settling down. With just a thin layer of leather between the seat of his trousers and my knees, I could almost feel the warmth of his body. As for his broad, muscular shoulders, they rested flatly against my chest, while his 2 heavy arms were deposited squarely on mine. I could imagine this individual puffing away at his cigar, for the strong aroma came floating to my nostrils. Just imagine yourself in my queer position, madam, and reflect for a brief moment on the utterly unnatural state of affairs. As for myself, however, I was utterly frightened, petrified, with cold sweat running down my armpits. Beginning with this individual, several people sat on my knees that day, as if they had patiently awaited their turn. No one, however, suspected even for a fleeting moment that the soft cushion on which they were sitting was actually human flesh, with blood circulating in its veins, confined in a strange world of darkness. What was it about this mystic hole that fascinated me so? I somehow felt like an animal living in a totally new world. And as for the people who lived in the world outside, I could distinguish them only as people who made weird noises, breathed heavily, talked, rustled their clothes, and possessed soft, round bodies. Gradually, I could begin to distinguish the sitters just by the sense of touch rather than sight. Those who were fat felt like large jellyfish, while those who were especially thin made me feel that I was supporting a skeleton. Other distinguishing factors consisted of the curve of the spine, the breadth of the shoulder blades, the length of the arms, and the thickness of their thighs, as well as the contour of their bottoms. It may seem strange, but I speak nothing but the truth when I say that although all people may seem alike, there are countless distinguishing traits among all men which can be seen merely by the feel of their bodies. In fact, there are just as many differences as in the case of fingerprints or facial contours. This theory, of course, also applies to female bodies. Usually women are classified in 2 large categories, the plain and the beautiful. However, in my dark, confined world inside the chair, facial merits or demerits were of secondary importance, being overshadowed by the more meaningful qualities found in the feel of flesh, the sound of the voice, and body odour. Madam, I do hope you will not be offended by the boldness with which I sometimes speak. And so, to continue with my narration, there was one girl, the first who ever sat on me, who kindled in my heart a passionate love. Judging solely by her voice, she was European. At the moment, although there was no one else present in the room, her heart must have been filled with happiness, because she was singing with a sweet voice when she came tripping into the room. Soon, I heard her standing immediately in front of my chair, and without giving any warning, she suddenly burst into laughter. The very next moment, I could hear her flapping her arms like a fish struggling in a net. And then she sat down, on me. For a period of about 30 minutes, she continued to sing, moving her body and feet in tempo with the melody. For me, this was quite an unexpected development, for I had always held aloof from all members of the opposite sex because of my ugly face. Now I realized that I was present in the same room with a European girl whom I had never seen, my skin virtually touching hers through a thin layer of leather. Unaware of my presence, she continued to act with unreserved freedom, doing as she pleased. Inside the chair, I could visualize myself hugging her, kissing her snowy white neck. If only I could remove that layer of leather. Following this somewhat unhallowed but nevertheless enjoyable experience, I forgot all about my original intentions of committing robbery. Instead, I seemed to be plunging headlong into a new whirlpool of maddening pleasure. Long I pondered, maybe I was destined to enjoy this type of existence. Gradually, the truth seemed to dawn on me. For those who were as ugly and as shunned as myself, it was assuredly wiser to enjoy life inside a chair. For in this strange, dark world, I could hear and touch all desirable creatures. Love in a chair. This may seem altogether too fantastic. Only one who has actually experienced it will be able to vouch for the thrills and the joys it provides. Of course, it is a strange form of love, limited to the senses of touch, hearing, and smell. A love burning in a world of darkness. Believe it or not, many of the events that take place in this world are beyond full understanding. In the beginning, I had intended only to perpetrate a series of robberies and then flee. Now, however, I became so attached to my quarters that I adjusted them more and more to permanent living. In my nocturnal prowlings, I always took the greatest of precautions, watching each step I took, hardly making a sound. Hence there was little danger of being detected. When I recall, however, that I spent several months inside the chair without being discovered even once, it indeed surprises even me. For the better part of each day, I remained inside the chair, sitting like a contortionist, with my arms folded, knees bent. As a consequence, I felt as if my whole body were paralyzed. Furthermore, as I could never stand up straight, my muscles became taut and inflexible, and gradually I began to crawl instead of walk to the washroom. What a madman I was! Even in the face of all these sufferings, I could not persuade myself to abandon my folly and leave that weird world of sensuous pleasure. In the hotel, although there were several guests who stayed for a month or even two, making the place their home, there was always a constant inflow of new guests and an equal exodus of the old. As a result, I could never manage to enjoy a permanent love. Even now, as I bring back to mind all my love affairs, I can recall nothing but the touch of warm flesh. Some of the women possessed the firm bodies of ponies, others seemed to have the slimy bodies of snakes, and still others had bodies composed of nothing but fat, giving them the bounce of a rubber ball. There were also the unusual exceptions who seemed to have bodies made only of sheer muscle, like artistic Greek statues. But notwithstanding the species or types, one and all had a special magnetic allure, quite distinctive from the others, and I was perpetually shifting the object of my passions. At one time, for example, an internationally famous dancer came to Japan and happened to stay at this same hotel, although she sat in my chair only on one single occasion. The contact of her smooth, soft flesh against my own afforded me a hitherto unknown thrill. So divine was the touch of her body that I felt inspired to a state of positive exaltation. On this occasion, instead of my carnal instincts being aroused, I simply felt like a gifted artist being caressed by the magic wand of a fairy. Strange, eerie episodes followed in rapid succession. However, as space prohibits, I shall refrain from giving a detailed description of each and every case. Instead, I shall continue to outline the general course of events. One day, several months following my arrival at the hotel, there suddenly occurred an unexpected change in the shape of my destiny. For some reason, the foreign proprietor of the hotel was forced to leave for his homeland, and as a result, the management was transferred to Japanese hands. Originating from this change in proprietorship, a new policy was adopted, calling for a drastic retrenchment in expenditures, the abolishment of luxurious fittings, and other steps to increase profits through economy. One of the first results of this new policy was that management put all of the extravagant furnishings of the hotel up for auction. Included in the list of items for sale was my chair. When I learned of this new development, I immediately felt the greatest of disappointments. Soon, however, a voice inside me advised that I should return to the natural world outside and spend the tidy sum I had acquired by stealing. I of course realized that I would no longer have to return to my humble life as a craftsman, for actually I was comparatively wealthy. The thought of my new role in society seemed to overcome my disappointment in having to leave the hotel. Also, when I reflected deeply on all the pleasures which I had derived there, I was forced to admit that although my love affairs had been many, they had all been with foreign women, and that somehow something had always been lacking. I then realized fully and deeply that as a Japanese, I really craved a lover of my own kind. While I was turning these thoughts over in my mind, my chair, with me still in it, was sent to a furniture store to be sold at an auction. Maybe this time, I told myself, the chair will be purchased by a Japanese and kept in a Japanese home. With my fingers crossed, I decided to be patient and to continue with my existence in the chair a while longer. Although I suffered for 2 or 3 days in my chair while it stood in front of the furniture store, eventually it came up for sale, and was promptly purchased. This, fortunately, was because of the excellent workmanship which had gone into its making, and although it was no longer new, still had a dignified bearing. The purchaser was a high-ranking official who lived in Tokyo. When I was being transferred from the furniture store to the man's palatial residence, the bouncing and vibrating of the vehicle almost killed me. I gritted my teeth and bore up bravely, however, comforted by the thought that at last I had been bought by a Japanese. Inside his house, I was placed in a spacious Western-style study. One thing about the room which gave me the greatest of satisfactions was the fact that my chair was meant more for the use of his young and attractive wife than for his own. Within a month, I had come to be with the wife constantly, united with her as one, so to speak. With the exception of the dining and sleeping hours, her soft body was always seated on my knees, for the simple reason that she was engaged in a deep thinking task. You have no idea how much I loved this lady. She was the first Japanese woman with whom I had ever come into such close contact, and moreover she possessed a wonderfully appealing body. She seemed the answer to all my prayers. Compared with this, all my other affairs with the various women in the hotel seemed like childish flirtations, nothing more. Proof of the mad love which I now cherished for this intellectual lady was found in the fact that I longed to hold her every moment of the time. When she was away, even for a fleeting moment, I waited for her return, like a love-crazed Romeo yearning for his Juliet. Such feelings I had never hitherto experienced. Gradually, I came to wanting to convey my feelings to her, somehow. I tried vainly to carry out my purpose, but always encountered a blank wall, for I was absolutely helpless. Oh, how I longed to have her reciprocate my love. Yes, you may consider this the confession of a madman, for I was mad, madly in love with her. But how could I signal to her? If I revealed myself, the shock of the discovery would immediately prompt her to call her husband and the servants, and that, of course, would be fatal to me, for exposure would not only mean disgrace, but severe punishment for the crimes I had committed. I therefore decided on another course of action, namely, to add in every way to her comfort and thus awaken in her a natural love for the chair. As she was a true artist, I somehow felt confident that her natural love of beauty would guide her in the direction I desired. And as for myself, I was willing to find pure contentment in her love even for a material object, for I could find solace in the belief that her delicate feelings of love for even a mere chair were powerful enough to penetrate to the creature that dwelled inside, which was myself. In every way I endeavoured to make her more comfortable every time she placed her weight on my chair. Whenever she became tired from sitting long in one position on my humble person, I would slowly move my knees and embrace her more warmly, making her more snug. And when she dozed off to sleep, I would move my knees ever so softly to rock her into a deeper slumber. Somehow, possibly by a miracle, or was it just my imagination, this lady now seemed to love my chair deeply, for every time she sat down, she acted like a baby falling into a mother's embrace, or a girl surrendering herself into the arms of her lover. And when she moved herself about in the chair, I felt that she was feeling an almost amorous joy. In this way, The fire of my love and passion rose into a leaping flame that could never be extinguished, and I finally reached a stage where I simply had to make a strange, bold plea. Ultimately, I began to feel that if she would just look at me, even for a brief, passing moment, I could die with the deepest contentment. No doubt, madam, by this time you must certainly have guessed who the object of my mad passion is. To put it explicitly, she happens to be none other than yourself, madam. Ever since your husband bought you this chair from that furniture store, I have been suffering excruciating pains because of my mad love and longing for you. I am but a worm, loathsome creature. I have but one request. Could you meet with me just once? I will ask nothing further of you. I, of course, do not deserve your sympathy, for I has always been nothing but a villain, unworthy even to touch the soles of your feet. But if you will grant me this one request, just out of compassion, my gratitude will be eternal. Last night, I stole out of your residence to write this confession, because even leaving aside the danger, I did not possess the courage to meet you suddenly face to face, without any warning or preparation. While you are reading this letter, I will be roaming around your house with bated breath. If you will agree to my request, please place your handkerchief on the pot of flowers that stands outside your window. At this signal, I will open your front door and enter as a humble visitor. Thus ended the letter. Even before Yoshiko had read many pages, some premonition of evil had caused her to become deadly pale. Rising unconsciously, she had fled from the study, from that chair upon which she had been seated, and had sought sanctuary in one of the Japanese rooms of her house. For a moment, it had been her intention to stop reading and tear up the eerie message, but somehow she had read on, with the closely written sheets laid on a low desk. Now that she had finished, her premonition was proved correct. That chair on which she had sat from day to day, had it really contained a man? If true, what a horrible experience she had unknowingly undergone. A sudden chill came over her, as if ice water had been poured down her back, and the shivers that followed never seemed to stop. Like one in a trance, she gazed into space. Should she examine the chair? But how could she possibly steel herself for such a horrible ordeal? Even though the chair might now be empty, what about the filthy remains, such as the food and other necessary items which he must have used? Madam, a letter for you. With a start, she looked up and found her maid standing at the doorway with an envelope in her hand. In a daze, Yoshiko took the envelope and stifled a scream. Horror of horrors. It was another message from the same man. Again, her name was written in that same familiar scrawl. For a long while she hesitated, wondering whether she should open it. At last she mustered up the courage to break the seal and shakingly took out the pages. This second communication was short and curt, and it contained another breathtaking surprise. Forgive my boldness in addressing another message to you. To begin with, I merely happen to be one of your ardent admirers. The manuscript, which I submitted to you under separate cover, was based on pure imagination and my knowledge that you had recently bought that chair. It is a sample of my own humble attempts at fictional writing. If you would kindly comment on it, I shall know no greater satisfaction. For personal reasons, I submitted my manuscript prior to writing this letter of explanation, and I assume you have already read it. How did you find it? If, madam, you have found it amusing or entertaining in some degree, I shall feel that my literary efforts have not been wasted. Although I purposely refrained from telling you in the manuscript, I intend to give my story the title of The Human Chair. With all my deepest respects and sincere wishes, I remain cordially yours, Hori Tatsuo. Yeah, he really did just go, lol, just kidding. Psych. That was pretty good, actually. I liked that one. Takes a lot to unsettle me, I think. Because that didn't. Yeah, just didn't. Not complaining. It was good. I think I might just be broken. Why the chair? Because I think the human table would have had slightly different energy. Thank you for the recommendation, though. That was a good read. Hopefully I did the spooky voice justice. Well, not spooky, creepy. I could certainly... I had a particular freak in mind. I had fun. I had a lot of fun. That was good. That's a good question. Payne, would you take that chair home? That is such an inside joke reference. I'm sorry. Look. On the bright side, the chair didn't go every time it was sat on. So that's a win. I'm totally imagining like a Belle Delphine human gamer chair bath water something. It's gross. Too many people would buy it. We should start a merch store. Except the chair water only gains value the more people that sit in it. And then writes you a letter. So that was a whole experience. Precisely. It's essence of everyone. That's alright. Artsy is just one of today's lucky 10,000. And for those unfamiliar, those who would like to be one of today's lucky 10,000 about the lucky 10,000, there is truly an XK city for everything. And I am going to share with y'all when I can find OBS. Bear with me. That's what a grumble, grumble, grumble. Jesus, Koi, how do you make this look so easy? Seriously. Pain, we said stupid, not creepy as balls. $10,000 dungeon. That'll do. One of today's lucky 10,000. This is a very classic CD. It's a nice take on, rather than berating and holding it against people for not knowing everything, everyone gets an opportunity to learn something for the first time every single day. So if there is something new to be learned today, you can be one of today's lucky 10,000. The more you know. Pain. You don't regret that, Pain. You don't regret it at all. Do you, Pain? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being wholesome enough to not know every slur under the sun. Why is your desk shaking, Koi? Is it a subwoofer? Do you have a subwoofer on? I wanted to see if I could make it rumble. Yes, Koi. Get that bass turned up. I'm afraid it is another earthquake, and it rates 69.420 on the Dankter scale. That was frankly terrible. If I could feel shame, I would feel ashamed of that one. But I don't. Well, I'm sorry to all of you who have good headphones or subwoofers in your headphones, but yes, interview time. Stream was good. Stream was fun. Stream was harder and not as hard on my voice as I thought. But that's okay. Gotta practice it somehow. Ooh, ooh. Hang on. Giggity. Sure. Let's get me to affiliate. Drop the bush. I can't remember off the top of my head what we require for that, but let's go and figure it out together. Oh lord. We need a gizmo, but it's actually a screaming one, so anytime he goes off in the background, it's just... yeah. 50 followers, 7 streams in 30 days, yeah. Well, that is 2 streams a week. And you all have managed to, like, double my follower count tonight, so, like, holy shit, guys, thank you. I think we can do this. Let's get to affiliate and then get all them heckin' emotes. So come on, Pain. Be a good boy. Be good, Pain. I think we broke Pain. Pain, don't make me come over there. You'll regret it. Drop the salmon. Insert wet fish sounds here because clipping. See, people say that you haven't seen me try to fix something. I assure you, Pain. I assure you, things can always be broken worse. Come, Samba. Well, I think that might be a good place to wrap up for the evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming along tonight. You'll have been absolutely incredible company. And may I say, stay safe, stay comfortable, stay cozy. Thank you, everyone. I would love that. No, I will never read Harry Potter, and you could not stab me with a hot poker in order to do it. Yes, an incredible big thank you to Koi. Koi, you cannot use the banhammer on me. I have the power here. Get wrecked. And get shout out, lol. Alright, go and check out Koi, everyone. Seriously, if you haven't, do it. If you've already done it, do it again. Seriously. I'd say tell Koi that we sent you, but, well, that seems unnecessary. But go and give Koi a follow. If you can, even better, go and give her all your money. Yes. 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 Alright, good night.